Welcome aboard, everyone. I'm TH, a certified flight instructor, and I want to personally welcome all of you pilots who are taking this lesson to take your skills and really your entire career to the next level. You know, as you advance in your aviation journey, the expectations on your shoulders shift pretty dramatically. You're no longer just learning how to manipulate the controls to get a plane off the ground. You're learning to manage it, to command it, and to take absolute, uncompromising legal and practical responsibility for it. So today, we're focusing heavily on a truly critical aspect of that command, the maintenance logbook. This explainer is going to give you the deep, professional understanding you need to confidently verify your aircraft's airworthiness before you ever even think about turning the key.
All right, here is our flight plan for this explainer. We'll start with the philosophy of proving aircraft airworthiness, move into the aircraft status sheet, and then decode airframe logbook entries. After that, we'll tackle the engine, propeller, and airworthiness directives, navigate those tricky airworthiness approval tags, and finally, lock in the strict regulatory requirements of FAR 43.9.
So, let's jump right into Section 1, Proving Aircraft Airworthiness. As an advancing pilot, you really need to develop a rock-solid foundational philosophy about documentation. Think about it. The aircraft might look absolutely pristine sitting out there on the ramp. The engine might sound perfect during your run-up, and the flight controls might feel exceptionally smooth. But here's the reality. None of that legally proves the aircraft is safe to fly. Our core tenet today is simply this. This book is how we are going to prove airworthiness. As pilot in command, the physical maintenance logbook is your ultimate, undeniable proof of an aircraft's safe and legal status. It is the definitive record of the machine's entire history, its current health, and its strict compliance with federal regulations. Without this book, you have absolutely no proof, and without proof, you simply have no business taking that aircraft up into the sky.
The crucial point we have to make here is about absolute pilot responsibility. You might be wondering, why do we need to dive this incredibly deeply into the paperwork? Well, because there is no guarantee you are going to stay under the protective umbrella of a highly structured flight school forever. You might get your private pilot certificate, leave the school environment, and go purchase your very own airplane, potentially operating for years without having another instructor looking over your shoulder. When you are out there on your own in the Part 91 world, nobody's going to hand you a neatly verified, color-tabbed binder right before your flight. Verifying those logbooks is a critical, independent responsibility. You must possess the professional knowledge to scrutinize the maintenance history yourself and confidently stand behind your decision to fly.
Moving right along to Section 2, the aircraft status sheet.
Okay, before you ever actually touch the physical logbooks, you will very likely encounter a summary document known as the aircraft status sheet. This is a fantastic quick reference guide that's often kept right in the dispatch book. It shows you exactly when the next inspection is due for the major items. We're talking about your annual inspection, the 100-hour inspection, altimeter and static pressure checks for IFR flight, the transponder for airspace compliance, and your emergency locator transmitter, alongside its strict annual battery requirement. It also summarizes the general status of the airframe, engine, propeller, and your airworthiness directives. But listen to me closely on this one, because this is vital. While this sheet is incredibly helpful for a quick glance, it is absolutely not the logbook. To truly legally verify airworthiness, you must physically open the maintenance logbook and confirm the real, ink-on-paper entry for each one of these bulleted items. That summary sheet is just a roadmap. The logbook is the actual destination.
Let's dive into Section 3, Decoding Airframe Logbook Entries.
We are cracking open the actual books now. Maintenance logbooks are typically divided into distinct sections. You've got your airframe, engine, and propeller. And here is a massive professional tip for efficiently navigating these records without getting hopelessly lost in decades of mechanical history. Always, always start at the end of each section. Why? Because that is exactly where you're going to find the most recent relevant entries. Let's be real, you generally do not need to read what a mechanic did to a wing strut back in 1985 to know if the plane is legal to fly today. You open to the back, you locate the current annual or 100-hour sign-off, and you work your way backward only as far as absolutely necessary to verify the current legal status of the airframe. Let's take a look at a real-world annual inspection entry. Look closely at the exact text the mechanic uses here. It says, complied with an annual inspection IAW Piper SM and 14 CFR Part 43 Appendix D. Now that acronym IAW is vital. It means in accordance with. The mechanic, whose signature and ANP with inspection authorization number are clearly visible right at the bottom, is legally putting their hard-earned certificate on the line. They are explicitly stating they followed the manufacturer's Piper Service Manual and the specific federal aviation regulations, specifically Part 43 Appendix D, which is the legal mandated checklist for an annual inspection. They also take the time to note routine maintenance items like repacking wheel bearings and replacing filters. This level of thoroughness is exactly what a legal, complete entry looks like.
Now, in that previous entry, you might have caught a specific little note, ELT batteries due 07-2017. This brings up the absolutely critical concept of a battery's half-life. By regulation, even if that emergency locator battery has never once been activated or used in a real emergency, it is only legally serviceable until its calculated half-life. You must strictly replace that battery at the exact halfway mark of its useful life, regardless of its current charge or total lack of use. There's no wiggle room here. This is a hard regulatory limit. And as the advancing pilot, it is entirely your job to ensure that date is not passed before you step into the cockpit.
At the top of nearly every single logbook entry, you are going to see a block of time calculations. You need to decode these critical time tracking acronyms accurately so you can calculate component wear and upcoming inspection intervals. TTAF stands for Total Time Airframe. That's the total hours the physical structure of the aircraft has been in service since the day it rolled out of the factory. ENG-SMOH is Engine Since Major Overhaul, and ENG-TSN is Engine Time Since New. Thoroughly understanding how to read and apply these numbers is exactly how you independently track when the next 100-hour is due or when a specific time-limited engine component might be nearing its recommended replacement time.
Let's expand a bit on that SMOH acronym. What physically constitutes a major overhaul? Well, when an engine is overhauled, it is taken tail down, the cases are completely split open, and the whole thing is rebuilt from the inside out. Worn parts are strictly replaced or refurbished to exact factory tolerances, or sometimes both. It is technically the exact same engine by serial number, but it is returned to a state that is virtually like new. Oh, and here's a quick word to the wise when you're reviewing these overhaul or annual inspection entries. Always read the entire box of text. Mechanics will frequently tuck other minor inspections or even mandatory Airworthiness Directive compliances right into the same paragraph as the main inspection. If you don't read the whole box, you might mistakenly ground an aircraft thinking an AD is overdue, when in reality it was actually completed and signed off during the annual.
Okay, let's look at another example. This is a standard 100-hour inspection entry. I want you to notice the distinct difference in the certification statement at the bottom compared to the annual we just looked at. The mechanic certifies that this aircraft has been inspected IAW a 100-hour checklist and is approved for return to service. He then provides his A&P signature and certificate number. Unlike the annual inspection, which absolutely requires a mechanic holding an additional inspection authorization, a standard airframe and power plant mechanic can legally sign off this 100-hour inspection.
Now, occasionally, you are going to come across an entry for a 50-hour inspection. It's imperative we clearly contrast these two so there's no confusion. The 100-hour inspection is legally mandated if you are carrying passengers for hire or providing flight instruction in that specific aircraft. A 50-hour inspection, however, is not a federal regulatory requirement for airworthiness. It cannot be used to determine airworthiness in any legal sense. A 50-hour is purely an insurance thing, or honestly, a highly recommended best practice maintenance interval for changing the oil, checking the spark plugs, and looking for early signs of wear and tear. Performing a 50-hour does absolutely nothing to reset your legal 100-hour or annual clock.
Navigating the logbook like a pro means knowing exactly where specific systems live. For instance, your altimeter, static system, and transponder checks are typically recorded right in the main airframe part of the logbook, not hidden away in some separate avionics book. Furthermore, there is a very specific and kind of tricky nuance regarding the emergency locator transmitter. If the logbook simply states ELT battery was changed, that physical action legally resets the 12 calendar month requirement for the ELT inspection, even if the entry doesn't explicitly use the phrase ELT annual. The physical act of properly changing the battery and recording it completely satisfies the FAA's timing requirement.
Let's transition over to Section 4, Engine, Propeller, and ADS.
Just like the airframe, your power plant and propeller have their own specific logbook sections with their own completely separate annual and 100-hour inspection sign-offs. But listen, this is also where you must heavily scrutinize your airworthiness directives, or ADs. Take the Piper Arrow as a specific, highly relevant example. There is a well-known AD regarding its external fuel injection lines. The environment under that cowling involves intense heat and massive vibration, meaning a failed line could spray raw fuel directly over a hot exhaust.
Because of that severe risk, the regulation mandates compliance every 100 hours time in service or any time maintenance is performed on the fuel injection system. If you are commanding an aero, you must find the exact specific entry in the engine logbook proving this specific AD was complied with within that strict legal time frame. No assumptions allowed.
Moving on to Section 5, Navigating Airworthiness Approval Tags.
Sometimes, a logbook entry will reference a specific form or a tag physically attached to a newly installed part. This is commonly known in the aviation industry as the yellow tag, or formerly FAA Form 81303. Form 81303, which is referenced deeply in Advisory Circular 20-62E, serves a dual purpose depending on which side of the FAA is currently involved. On one hand, it certifies original conformity, meaning it legally approves that brand new or used parts meet the strict conformity requirements directly from production approval holders. On the other hand, it is used for recurrent return to service. This certifies approval for a component to return to service following major maintenance or alteration by an authorized airworthiness maintenance program, which is typically operating under Part 135. It is essentially the ultimate legally binding paper trail for an aircraft component.
And finally, Section 6, FAR 43.9, Record Requirements.
All right, this is the hard regulatory law governing exactly what must be recorded when a maintenance release document or logbook entry is generated. This is the exact standard you are looking for. Under FAR 43.9 paragraph A, there are 4 non-negotiable requirements for anyone who maintains, rebuilds, or alters an aircraft or its components. 1. A clear description of the work performed or a direct reference to acceptable data. 2. The exact date the work was completed. 3. The name of the person performing the work. And 4. If the work was satisfactory, the signature, certificate number, and kind of certificate held by the person approving the work. Crucially, the regulation explicitly states that this signature constitutes the approval for return to service only for the specific work performed, not a blanket approval for the entire aircraft.
Now, the regulation has some further nuances you really must understand as a professional aviator. Paragraph B specifically covers Part 121 and 135 operators who have a continuous airworthiness maintenance program, dictating they make records in strict accordance with their specific operational provisions rather than the standard general aviation rules. Paragraph C lists exceptions, noting that this specific section does not apply to persons performing inspections in accordance with Part 91 or 125. Those operations actually have their own specific recording rules under FAR 43.11. Finally, Paragraph D mandates that, in addition to the standard logbook entry, any major repairs or major alterations must be entered on a specific document, typically FAA Form 337, in the exact manner prescribed in Appendix B. It's a lot of layers, but it's essential knowledge.
Let's apply all of this regulatory theory with a practical, everyday operational example. Imagine your mechanic took off your aircraft's oil cooler. That's step 1. Step 2, they sent it out to a highly specific FAA-authorized oil cooler service center. Step 3, that specialized center overhauled it according to the rigorous regulations we literally just discussed. Step 4, they send it back to your mechanic with an airworthiness approval tag. Yep, that yellow tag we broke down earlier. Your mechanic then installs it and makes a logbook entry. You must firmly understand that the yellow tag applies only to that specific overhauled oil cooler part being sent back, not to the whole airplane. The logbook entry physically written by your mechanic, complying strictly with 43.9, is what actually approves the installation itself and returns your aircraft to a legal flying status.
We have covered an immense amount of ground today, fellow aviators, from decoding the vital nuances of 100-hour inspections to mastering the strict regulatory framework of FAR 43.9 and Form 8133.3. But at the end of the day, it all comes back to that physical, undeniable book. So I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought. The next time you walk out to the ramp, pre-flighting a complex machine that is built to defy gravity, ask yourself, are you truly ready to stake your pilot certificate, your entire career, and frankly, your life on the accuracy of the ink in that book? Take absolute, uncompromising ownership of your pre-flight logbook scrutiny. It is your right, and it is your ultimate responsibility as pilot in command. Keep learning, keep digging into those books, and as always, fly safe.